What's good, y'all? So I've been seeing this story everywhere on social media about how slaves used to braid escape maps into their hair. And honestly, at first I was like, nah, that sounds too good to be true. But then I started thinking about my own story. I'm from Togo, West Africa. Born there, came to America when I was 7 years old. And let me tell you, all of my aunties own hair braiding shops, all of them. Growing up, I watched these women's hands create the most intricate patterns you've ever seen. Braids, twists, designs that look like art, and they'd be talking, laughing, sharing stories while they worked. I thought it was just, what aunties do. Today, we see these styles as trends, Instagram posts, our red carpet moments, fashion statements. But little do we know, back then they were actually secret codes, maps that our ancestors used to survive. So I had to dig deeper, because if there's one thing I learned from my aunties, it's that every braid tells a story. So first, let's talk about what we can actually prove. In 2011, the Washington Post interviewed this woman, Xiomara Asprilla Garcia. She's an Afro-Colombian hair braider, and she shared stories that have been passed down in her community for generations. According to these oral histories, enslaved women in Colombia would braid specific styles to communicate. There was this style called départé, thick, tight braids tied into buns, and that meant I want to escape. Curved braids, those represented the actual roads they would take. They would hide seeds and even gold in their thick braids. Survival kit right in their hair. But here's where it gets interesting. When Snopes fact-checked all those viral posts about this happening in the American South, they couldn't find any documented evidence. No slave narratives, no historical records, nothing. Now, does that mean it never happened? That's the million-dollar question. See, to understand why these stories hit so deep, we gotta go way back. There's this carved figure called the Venus of Brassampui. It's 25,000 years old, and it shows intricate braided patterns. Nobody knows for sure if it's hair or some kind of cap, but the point is, humans have been doing complex things with hair since forever. In ancient Egypt, over 3,000 years ago, they had clay sculptures showing cornrow-style braids. And these weren't just hairstyles. They told you everything about a person, their social status, their age, their role in society. Now, across Africa, braiding patterns were like ID cards. Your tribe, whether you were married, how wealthy you were, everything was coded into your hair. This part right here, this is documented history. So, when our ancestors were stolen and brought to the Americas, they weren't just losing their freedom. They were losing a 5,000-year-old way of communicating who they were. But here's what we know for sure happened. Enslaved African women absolutely hid rice seeds in their hair. UCLA professor Judith Carney wrote a whole book about this called Black Rice. She documented how women from places like my homeland smuggled rice grains from Africa in their braids during that horrific Middle Passage. And it worked. South Carolina's entire rice economy, we're talking some of the wealthiest plantations in America, was built on African agricultural knowledge that my people brought over. The enslaved people literally brought the seeds and the expertise to grow them. That's not some legend. That's documented economic history. So the idea of hiding survival resources in hair, that definitely happened. The question is just how elaborate these communication systems actually got. The most detailed stories come from Colombia, where this escaped king named Bicos Biojo founded these free black towns called Palenque back in the late 1500s. San Basilio de Palenque still exists today. UNESCO recognizes it as a masterpiece of oral heritage, and the people there, they still tell stories about braids being used for communication. According to their community history, women would observe escape routes when they had to travel with their masters, then braid that information into patterns. Thick braids meant rivers to cross. Curves meant winding paths. Knots showed meeting points. Can we prove it happened exactly like that? No, but Patricia Turner, this folklorist at UCLA who studies these stories, told Snopes something that really stuck with me. She said, when fugitive slaves figured out how to get themselves from place to place, they were incredibly brave and heroic people. That's the core message, and that's true. See, a lot of Underground Railroad history focuses on white abolitionists as the heroes, but these hair braiding stories, they put Black ingenuity front and center. Our people using their own knowledge, their own resources, their own cultural practices to free themselves. And honestly, hair was the perfect hiding spot. Like Turner pointed out, slave owners felt like they owned black bodies completely. If they wanted to search someone, they wouldn't hesitate to strip them down. But who's going to sit there and carefully examine every single braid pattern? Now let's fast forward to today, because this fight, it never ended. As of 2024, right now, only 25 US states have passed the Crown Act. That's legislation that makes it illegal to discriminate against natural black hairstyles. That means in half this country, you can still legally get fired for wearing the same braids my aunties have been doing their whole lives. California was the first to pass it in 2019. Think about that. It took until 2019 for it to be illegal in even one state to discriminate against protective hairstyles. Research shows over 90% of employers don't have policies protecting natural black hair. Kids are still getting suspended from school for their hair texture. The same hair texture I was born with, the same hair my little cousins have. So whether those escape maps were exactly real or not, the fight over black hair never stopped. It just moved from plantations to corporate boardrooms and school dress codes. Here's what I know for sure after growing up around this. For thousands of years, African hair braiding has been about identity, community, and yes, resistance. Those 25,000-year-old braids on the Venus of Brasampui, Egyptian cornrows from 3,000 years ago, the patterns my aunties still do today, they're all connected. Our ancestors absolutely used their cultural knowledge to survive, hiding rice seeds, creating free communities, keeping traditions alive that oppressors couldn't understand or recognize. And today, every time I walk into one of my aunties' shops and watch someone getting braids, I see the same thing that's been happening for millennia. Stories being shared, community being built, identity being celebrated and preserved. Whether every detail about those escape maps is historically accurate doesn't change this. The resistance was real. The ingenuity was real. The cultural preservation was real. Look, I could have just made this video repeating whatever's trending on social media, but y'all deserve better than that. The truth is always more complex than a viral post. What I know from my own heritage, African hair traditions are ancient and powerful. Our people used every tool they had to resist oppression, and the fight to wear our natural hair without discrimination, that's still happening right now. What I can't prove, exactly how elaborate those communication systems were during slavery, but what matters is understanding that survival and resistance take forms that oppressors then and now often can't see or understand. Growing up watching my aunties work, I learned that every braid tells a story. Today I'm sharing that story with you. Complex, personal, and honest. Now, speaking of my aunties and their shops, they didn't just preserve culture, they built businesses, successful businesses that support their families and communities. And if you're a braider watching this, you know how hard it can be to grow your client base and really scale your business. That's why I created Braider Pro, a free community where braiders share proven strategies, get templates that actually work, and learn frameworks that my aunties wish they had when they started out. Whether you're just starting out or you've been braiding for years, this community has everything you need to take your skill and your business to the next level. The link is right down there in the description. Because here's the thing, our ancestors used braids to survive and resist. Today, we use them to thrive and build generational wealth. That's the evolution right there. If this video opened your eyes to the real history behind what you do every day, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that connect our past to our present. Drop a comment and let me know what's a tradition in your family or culture that carries deeper meaning than people realize. And remember, every braid tells a story. Make sure yours is worth telling. I'll see y'all in the next one.